There's something about
leather? No, it isn't. She eats everything. So now she sleeps in the laundry room, which is huge. And she doesn't mind it, but she has eaten the trim from around the bathroom door.
Wow.
She's eaten the whole corner of
what kind of dog is this?
She's a Rottweiler German
Yeah.
Shepherd. And she's just a baby. You know, she's a year and 3 months old.
Wow.
So hopefully she'll grow out of it.
We're out of it.
But she's ginormous. She eats everything. What are you gonna do? All right, I think we don't wait for Eric.
All right.
Okay, so we're just gonna read whether it's male, female. whether-
Yeah, we're just gonna go and rotate. And again, if a particular, I keep wanting to say soliloquies, that's why I always pause. If a particular monologue is attractive to you, do you want a little piece of paper so you can write it down, or do you have something where you can note it?
I might have some.
Could also text it to yourself. I do that a lot.
I read already, so I have a good initial impression how it all goes, at least from my side.
Yeah, because you read through it, and I
There's a lot of-
haven't.
Yeah, good dynamics of it. Just how the characters play off each other. It seems to go pretty quick a lot of the time too. So right, one flows right into the next.
The next
so.
one. Right.
Yeah.
So obviously we're not singing.
Okay.
The Hill is basically, it's a monologue, but it's
yeah.
basically the introduction to the whole performance. It pretty much lays the groundwork for what it is.
Mm-hmm.
I am trying very hard to talk Scott into doing The Hill.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he'd be perfect for it.
Professional voice.
Yeah, I just, so you can read The Hill though. And we'll
Alright,
start here. And then
Okay.
So Act 1. Okay. Where are Elmer, Herman, Bert, Tom, and Charlie? The weak of will, the strong of arm, the clown, the boozer, the fighter. All are sleeping on the hill. One passed in a fever. One was burned in a mine. One was killed in a brawl. One died in jail. One fell from a bridge, toiling for children and wife. All are sleeping, sleeping, sleeping on the hill. Where are Ella, Kate, Mag, Lizzie, and Edith? The tender heart, the simple soul, the loud, the proud, the happy one? All are sleeping on the hill. One died in a shameful childbirth, one of a thwarted love, one at the hands of a brute in a brothel, one of a broken pride in the search for heart's desire, one after life in faraway London and Paris, was brought to her little space by Ella and Kate and Mag. All are sleeping, sleeping, sleeping on the hill.
Tom Beatty. And I say to you that life's a gamble, head and shoulders above us all. A gambler, head and shoulders above us all. No mayor alive can close the house, and if you lose, you can squeal as you will, you'll not get back your money. He makes the percentage hard to conquer. He stacks the cards to catch your weakness and not to meet your strength. And he gives you 70 years to play. For if you cannot win in what's that word? 70. Sorry, it was like
I know,
faded. You cannot win at all. So if you lose, get out of the room. Get out of the room when your time is up. It means to sit and fumble the cards and curse your losses, leaden-eyed, whining to try and try.
So this is a song, so we're going to pass
Let's
on the
pass
song.
on. So you go to
Okay,
Mrs.
so
Williams.
Mrs. Williams. I was the milliner, talked about, lied about, mother of Dora, whose strange appearance was charged to her rearing. My quick eye to beauty saw much besides ribbons and buckles and feathers and leghorns and felts. To set off sweet faces and dark hair and gold. One thing I will tell you, and one I will ask. The stealers of husbands wear powder and trinkets and fashionable hats. Wives, wear them yourselves. Hats may make divorces. They also prevent them. Well, now let me ask you. If all of the children born here in Spoon River had been reared by the county, somewhere on a farm, and the fathers and mothers had been given their freedom to live and enjoy, change mates if they wished, do you think that Spoon River had been any the worse?
Dora Williams.
When Reuben Cartier ran away and threw me, I went to Springfield. There I met a lush whose father, just deceased, left him a fortune. He married me when drunk. My life was wretched. A year passed, and one day they found him dead. That made me rich. I moved on to Chicago. After a time, met Tyler Roundtree, villain. I moved on to New York. A gray-haired magnate went mad about me, so another fortune. He died one night in my arms, you know. I saw his purple face for years thereafter. There was almost a scandal. I moved on, this time to Paris. I was now a woman, insidious, subtle, versed in the world, and rich. My sweet apartment near the Champs-Élysées, I'll figure out how to say it, became a center for all sorts of people. Musicians, poets, dandies, artists, nobles, where we spoke French and German, Italian, English. I wed Count Navigato, native of Genoa. We went to Rome. He poisoned me, I think. Now in the Camp Santo overlooking the sea where young Columbus dreamed the worlds. See what they chiseled. Contessa Navigato, implora eterna quient.
Archibald Higby. I loathed you, Spoon River. I tried to rise above you. I was ashamed of you. I despised you as the place of my nativity. And there in Rome, among the artists, speaking Italian, speaking French, I seemed to myself at times to be free of every trace of my origin. I seemed to be reaching the heights of art and to breathe the air that the masters breathed, and to see the world with their eyes. But still they pass my work and say, "What are you driving at, my friend?" Sometimes the faces looked like Apollo's. At others, has a trace of Lincoln's. There was no culture, you know, in Spoon River, and I burned with shame and held my peace. And what could I do, all covered over and weighted down with Western soil, except aspire and pray for another birth in the world, with all of Spoon River rooted out of my soul?
Did you find where we were?
Oh, we're doing straight through?
Yes.
I don't. No page. What page?
11.
Page 11,
Bottom of 11.
Okay.
Walter Simmons.
My parents thought that I would be as great as Edison or greater. For as a boy, I made balloons and wondrous kites and toys with clocks and little engines with tracks to run on, and telephones of cans and thread. I played the cornet and painted pictures, modeled in clay, and took the part of a villain in the octoroon. But then at 21, I married and had to live, and so, to live, I learned the trade of making watches and kept the jewelry store on the square, thinking, not of business, but of the engine. I studied the calculus to build, and all Spoon River watched and waited to see it work. But it never worked, and a few kind souls believed my genius was somehow hampered by the store. It wasn't true. The truth was, I didn't have the brains.
Deacon Taylor, I belong to the church and to the party of prohibition, and the villagers, thought I died of eating watermelon. In truth, I had cirrhosis of the liver. For every noon for 30 years, I slipped behind the prescription partition in Trainer's drugstore and poured a generous drink from the bottle marked Spiritus Frumenti.
Emily Sparks. Only the chemist can tell, and not always the chemist, what will result from compounding, fluids or solids, and who can tell how men and women will interact on each other, or what children will result. There were Benjamin Pantier and his wife, good in themselves, but evil toward each other. His oxygen, she hydrogen. Their son, a devastating fire.
Benjamin Pantier. Together in this grave lie Benjamin Pantier, attorney at law, and Nig, his dog, constant companion, solace and friend. Down the gray road, friends, children, men, and women, passing one by one out of life, left me till I was alone with Nig for partner, bedfellow, comrade, and drink. In the morning of life I knew aspiration and saw glory. Then she, who survives me, snared my soul with a snare which bled me to death. till I, once strong of will, lay broken, indifferent, living with Nig in the room back of a dingy office.
Mrs. Benjamin Pantier. I know that he told that I snared his soul with a snare which bled him to death, and all the men loved him, and most of the women pitied him. But suppose you are really a lady and have delicate taste, and loathe the smell of whiskey and onions, and the rhythm of Wordsworth's ode runs in your ears, while he goes about from morning till night, repeating bits of that common thing, oh, why should the spirit of mortal be proud? And then suppose you are a woman well endowed, and the only man with whom the law and morality permit you to have a marital relation is the very man that fills you with disgust every time you think of it, while you think of it, every time you see him. That's why I drove him from my home to live with his dog in a dingy room back of his office.
Benjamin Pantier. Under my jawbone is snuggled the bony nose of Nig. Our story is lost in silence. Go by, mad world.
Where is my boy? My boy? In what far part of the world? The boy I loved best of all in the world. I, the teacher, the old maid, the virgin heart? Who made them all my children? Did I know my boy all right? Thinking of him as a spirit aflame, active, ever aspiring.
Well, Emily Sparks, your prayers were not wasted. Your love was not all in vain. I owe whatever I was in life to your hope that would not give me up, to your love that saw me still as good. Dear Emily Sparks, let me tell you the story. I passed the effect of my father and mother. The milliner's daughter made me trouble, and out I went in the world, where I passed through every peril known, of wine and women and joy of life. One night in a room in the Rue de Rivoli, I was drinking wine with a black-eyed cocotte, and the tears swam into my eyes. She thought that they were amorous tears and smiled for thought of her conquest over me. But my soul was 3,000 miles away in the days when you taught me in Spoon River, and just because you no more could love me, nor pray for me, nor write me letters, the eternal silence of you spoke instead, and the black-eyed cocotte took the tears for hers, as well as the deceiving kisses I gave her. Somehow, from that hour, I had a new vision. Dear Emily Sparks.
Emily Sparks. Oh boy, boy, for whom I prayed and prayed in many a watchful hour at night. Do you remember the letter I wrote you of the beautiful love of Christ? And whether you ever took it or not, my boy, wherever you are, work for your soul's sake, that all the clay of you, all the dross of you, may yield to the fire of you, till the fire is nothing but light, nothing but light.
Margaret Fuller Slack. I would have been as great as George Eliot, but for an untoward fate. For look at the photograph of me made by Pennewitt, chin resting on hand and deep-set eyes, gray too and far-searching. But there was the old problem. Should it be called celibacy, matrimony, or unchastity? Then John Slack, the rich druggist, wooed me, luring me with the promise of leisure for my novel. And I married him, giving birth to 8 children, and had no time to write. It was all over with me anyway. When I ran the needle in my hand while washing the baby's things and died from lockjaw, an ironical death. Hear me, ambitious souls, sex is the curse of life.
Skip this one. Nolt Hoheimer. I was the first fruits of the Battle of Missionary Ridge. When I felt the bullet enter my heart, I wished I had stayed at home and gone to jail for stealing the hogs of curled Trenery, instead of running away and joining the army. Rather, 1,000 times the county jail than to lie under this marble figure with wings, and this granite pedestal bearing the words, Pro Patria. What do they mean anyway?
Lydia Bucket. Nolt Holheimer ran away to the war the day before Curl Trenery. Swore out a warrant through Justice Arnett for stealing hogs. But that's not the reason he turned a soldier. He caught me running with Lucius Atherton. We quarreled and I told him never again to cross my path. Then he stole the hogs and went to the war. Back of every soldier is a woman.
Fiddler Jones. The earth keeps some vibrations going there in your heart, and that is you. And if the people find you, can fiddle, why, well, fiddle you must for all your life. How could I till my 40 acres, not to speak of getting more, with the medley of horns and bassoons and piccolos, stirred in my brain by crows and robins, and the crack of the windmill, only these? I have never started to plow in my life that someone did not stop in the road and take me away to a dance or a picnic. I ended up with 40 acres. I ended up with a broken fiddle, and a broken laugh, and 1,000 memories, and not a single regret.
Ollie McKee. Have you seen walking through the village a man with downcast eyes and haggard face? That is my husband who, by secret cruelty, never to be told, robbed me of my youth and my beauty, till at last, wrinkled and with yellow teeth, and with broken pride and shameful humility, I sank into the grave. But what think you gnaws at my husband's heart? The face of what I was, the face of what he made me. These are driving him to the place where I lie, in death. Therefore, I am avenged.
Fletcher McGee. She took my strength by minutes. She took my life by hours. She drained me like a fevered moon? That saps the spinning world. The days went by like shadows. The minutes whirled like stars. She took pity from my heart and made it into smiles. She was a hunk of sculptor's clay. My secret thoughts were her fingers. They flew behind her pensive brow and lined it deep with pain. They set the lips and sagged the cheeks and dropped the eyes with sorrow. My soul had entered in the clay, fighting like 7 devils. It was not mine. It was not hers. She held it, but its struggles modeled a face she hated and a face I feared to see. I beat the windows, shook the bolts. I hid me in a corner, and then she died and haunted me and hunted me for life.
After one. And now, Judge, leader in the state, member of Congress, Hamilton Green.
Do you remember when I fought the bank in the courthouse ring for pocketing the interest on public funds? And when I fought our leading citizens for making the poor the pack horses of the taxes? And when I fought the businessmen who fought me in these fights? Then, do you remember?
I was a peasant girl from Germany, blue-eyed, rosy, happy, and strong. This isn't supposed to be sung, is it?
It's still you.
Yeah, it's just...
Oh, okay. And the first place I worked was at the Thomas Green's. On a summer's day when she was away, he stole into the kitchen and took me right in his arms and kissed me on my throat, I turning my head. Then neither of us seemed to know what happened, and I cried for what would become of me. And I cried, as my secret began to show. One day, Mrs. Green said she understood and would make no trouble for me, and being childless, would adopt it. He had given her a farm to be still. So she hid in the house and sent out rumors, as if it were going to happen to her. And all went well, and the child was born. They were so kind to me.
I was the only child of Francis Harris of Virginia and Thomas Green of Kentucky, of valiant and honorable blood both. From my mother I inherited vivacity, fancy language. From my father, will, judgment, logic. All honor to them for what service I was to the people.
But at political rallies with sitters by thought, I was crying at the eloquence of Hamilton Green. That was not it. No, I wanted to say, "That's my son! That's my son!"
Rosie Roberts. I was sick, but more than that, I was mad at the crooked police and the crooked game of life. So I wrote to a chief of police in Peoria. I am here in my girlhood home in Spoon River, gradually wasting away. But come and take me. I killed the son of a merchant prince in Madame Lou's, and the papers that said he killed himself in his home while cleaning a hunting gun lied like the devil to hush up scandal. For the bribe of advertising in my room, I shot him at Madame Lou's because he knocked me down when I said that, in spite of all the money he had, I'd seen my lover that night.
Russian Sonia. I, born and Weimar of a mother who was French, and German father, a most learned professor. She has a very strange Russian accent. Orphaned at 14 years, became a dancer known as Russian Sonia. All up and down the boulevards of Paris, mistress bed betimes of sundry dukes and counts, and later a poor artist and a poet. At 40 years passé, I sought New York and met old Patrick Hummer on the boat. Red face and hale, though turned his 60th year, returning after having sold a shipload of cattle in the German city Hamburg. He brought me to Spoon River, and we lived here for 20 years. They thought that we were married. This oak tree near me is the favorite haunt of blue jays, chattering all the day. And why not? For my very dust is laughing for thinking of the humorous thing called life.
All right, you have to do that one.
I'd have to learn to have a Russian accent.
Lucius Atherton. When my mustache curled and my hair was black and I wore tight trousers and a diamond stud, I was an excellent knave of hearts who took many a trick. But when the gray hairs began to appear, lo, a new generation of girls laughed at me, not fearing me, and I had no more exciting adventures wherein I was all but shot for a heartless devil, but only drabby affairs, warmed over affairs of other days and other men. And time went on until I lived at Meyer's restaurant, partaking of short orders, a gray, untidy, toothless, discarded rural Don Juan. There is a mighty shade here, Dante, who sings of the one named Beatrice. And I see now that the force that made him great drove me to the dregs of life.
Eugene Carmen. Road slave, selling shoes and gingham, flour and bacon, overalls, clothing, all day long. For 14 hours a day, for 313 days, for more than 20 years. Saying yes'm and yes sir and thank you. 1,000 times a day, and all for $50 a month. Living in this stinking room with a rattletrap commercial. And compelled to go to Sunday school and to listen to the Rev. Abner Pete 104 times a year for more than an hour at a time. Because Thomas Rhodes ran the church as well as the store and the bank. So while I was tying my necktie that morning, I suddenly saw myself in the glass. My hair all gray, my face like a sodden pie. So I cursed and cursed. You damned old thing. You cowardly dog. You rotten pauper. You Rhodes slave. Till Roger Baum thought I was having a fight with someone and looked through the transom just in time to see me fall on the floor in a heap from a broken vein in my head.
All right, so this one is going to be...
Oh my gosh, I didn't think you were in here. I thought you took a phone call. It scared me.
Maybe you and I could, page 24, do you want to trade off? I'll be Emily, B. William.
All right, sure.
Both together. There is something about death, like love itself,
If with someone with whom you have known passion,
and the glow of youthful love,
you also
after years of living together,
feel the sinking of the fire,
and thus fade away together, gradually,
faintly,
delicately,
as it were in each other's arms.
passing from the familiar room.
That is a power of unison between souls, like love itself.
Yeebaw, right? Or yeebaw?
Yep.
They got me into the Sunday school in Spoon River and tried to get me to drop Confucius for Jesus. I could have been so no worse off if I had tried to get them to drop Jesus for Confucius. For without any warning, as if it were a prank, and sneaking up behind me, Harry Wiley, the minister's son, caved my ribs into my lungs with a blow of his fist. Now I shall never sleep with my ancestors in Pekin?
Peking?
Say again?
Oh, I don't know.
Oh.
Peking.
And no children shall worship at my grave.
How many times during the 20 years I was your leader, friends of Spoon River, did you neglect the convention and caucus and leave the burden on my hands of guarding and saving the people's cause? Sometimes because you were ill, or your grandmother was ill, or you drank too much and fell asleep, or else you said, "He is our leader. All will be well. He fights for us. We have nothing to do but follow." But oh, how you cursed me when I fell, and cursed me, saying I had betrayed you, in leaving the caucus room for a moment when the people's enemies there assembled, waited and watched for a chance to destroy the sacred rights of the people. You common rabble, I left the caucus to go to the urinal. That'd be hard for a woman to say.
Mrs. Kessler. Mr. Kessler, you know, was in the Army, and he drew $6 a month as a pension, stood on the corner talking politics, or sat at home reading Grant's memoirs. And I supported the family by washing, learning the secrets of all the people, from their curtains, counterpanes, shirts, and skirts. They're replaced with better, or none at all. People are prospering or falling back, and rents and patches widen with time. No thread or needle can paste decay, and there are stains that baffle soap, and there are colors that run in spite of you. Blamed though you are for spoiling a dress. Handkerchiefs, napery, have their secrets. The laundress, life, knows all about it. And I, who went to all the funerals held in Spoon River, swear I never saw a dead face without thinking it looked like something washed and ironed.
Well, don't you see? This was the way of it. We bought the farm with what he inherited, and his brothers and sisters accused him of poisoning his father's mind against the rest of them. And we never had any peace with our treasure. The Moraine took the cattle, and the crops failed, and lightning struck the granary. So we mortgaged the farm to keep going, and he grew silent and was worried all the time. Then some of the neighbors refused to speak to us, and took sides with his brothers and sisters. And I had no place to turn, as one may say to himself, at an earlier time in life. No matter, so-and-so is my friend, or I could shake this off with a little trip to Decatur. Then the dreadfulest smells infested the rooms, so I set fire to the beds in the old witch house, went up in a roar of flames, as I danced in the yard with waving arms, while he wept like a freezing steer.
George Gray.
This is mine.
I have studied many times the marble which was chiseled for me, a boat with furled sails at rest in a harbor. In truth, it pictures not my destination, but my life. For love was offered me, and I shrank from its disillusionment. Sorrow knocked at my door, but I was afraid. Ambition called to me, but I dreaded the chances. Yet all the while I hungered for the meaning in my life. And now I know that we must lift the sails and catch the winds of destiny wherever they drive the boat. To put meaning in one's life may end in madness, but madness without meaning is the torture of restlessness and vague desire. It is a boat longing for the sea, and yet afraid.
Harry Williams. I was just turned 21, and Henry Phipps, the Sunday school superintendent, made a speech in Bindle's Opera House.
The honor of the flag must be upheld, whether it be assailed by a barbarous tribe of Tagalogs or the greatest power in Europe.
And we cheered and cheered the speech and the flag he waved as he spoke. And I went to the war in spite of my father and followed the flag until I saw it raised by our camp in a rice field near Manila, and all of us cheered and cheered it. But there were flies and poisonous things, And there was the deadly water and the cruel heat and the sickening, putrid food and the smell of the trench just back of the tents where the soldiers went to empty themselves. And there were the horrors who followed us, full of syphilis and beastly acts between ourselves or alone, with bullied, hated, degradation among us, and days of loathing and nights of fear to the hour of the charge through the steaming swamp, following the flag till I fell with a scream shot through the guts. Now there's a flag over me in Spoon River. A flag.
Nellie Clark. I was only 8 years old, and before I grew up and knew what it meant, I had no words for it, except that I was frightened and told my mother, and that my father got a pistol and would have killed Charlie, who was a big boy, 15 years old, except for his mother. Nevertheless, the story clung to me. But the man who married me, a widower of 35, was a newcomer and never heard it, till 2 years after we were married, till he considered himself cheated, and the village agreed that I was not really a virgin. Well, he deserted me, and I died the following winter.
You want to be boy and I'll be girl?
So, okay. I'll,
Oh, we didn't.
some,
Yeah. Never mind.
next.
Roscoe. She loved me. Oh, how she loved me. I never had a chance to escape from the day she first saw me. But then after we were married, I thought she might prove her mortality and let me out, or she might divorce me. But few die, none resign. Then I ran away and was gone a year on a lark. But she never complained. She said all would be well, that I would return, and I did return. I told her that while taking a row in a boat, I had been captured near Van Buren Street by pirates on Lake Michigan, and kept in chains so I could not write her. She cried and kissed me and said it was cruel, outrageous, inhumane. I then concluded our marriage was a divine suspension and could not be dissolved except by death. I was right.
Mrs. Perkapile. He ran away and was gone for a year. When he came home, he told me the silly story of being kidnapped by pirates on Lake Michigan and kept in chains so he could not write me. I pretended to believe it, though I knew very well what he was doing, and that he met the milliner, Mrs. Williams, now and then when she went to the city to buy goods, as she said. But a promise is a promise, and marriage is marriage, and out of respect for my own character, I refused to be drawn into a divorce by the scheme of a husband who had merely grown tired of his marital vow and duty.
A.D. Blood. If you in the village think that my work was a good one, who closed the saloons and stopped all the playing at cards and hailed old Darcy Fraser before Justice Arnett in many a crusade to purge the people of sin, why do you let the milliner's daughter Dora and the worthless son of Benjamin Pantier nightly make my grave their unholy pillow?
Shat died. The white men played all sorts of jokes on me. They took big fish off my hook and put little ones on while I was away getting a stringer and made me believe I hadn't seen all right the fish I'd caught. When Burr Robin's circus came to town, they got the ringmaster let me tame a leopard, let a tame leopard into the ring. It made me believe I was whipping a wild beast like Samson. When I, for an offer of $50, dragged him out to his cage. One time I entered my blacksmith shop and shook as I saw some horseshoes crawling across the floor, as if alive. Walter Simmons had put a magnet under a barrel of water. Yet every one of you white men, was fooled about fish and about leopards too. And you didn't know any more than the horseshoes did what moved you about Spoon River.
Hannah Armstrong. I wrote him a letter asking him for old time's sake to discharge my sick boy from the army, but maybe he couldn't read it. Then I went to town and had James Garber, who wrote beautifully, write him a letter, and maybe that was lost in the mails. So I traveled all the way to Washington. I was more than an hour finding the White House, and when I found it, they turned me away, hiding their smiles. Then I thought, oh well, he ain't the same as when I boarded him, and he and my husband worked together, and all of us called him Abe. Baron Menard. As a last attempt, I turned to a guard and said, "Please say it's old Aunt Hannah Armstrong from Illinois. Come to see him about her sick boy in the army." Well, just in a moment they let me in. And when he saw me, he broke in a laugh and dropped his business as president and wrote in his hand Doug's discharge, talking the whole of the early days and telling stories.
At first you will know what they mean, and you may never know, and we may never tell you. These sudden flashes in your soul, like lambent lightning on snowy clouds at midnight when the moon is full. They come in solitude, or perhaps you sit with your friend, and all at once a silence falls on speech, and his eyes without a flicker of glow at you. You two have seen the secret together. He sees it in you, and you in him. And there you sit, thrilling lest the mystery stand before you and strike you dead, with a splendor like the sun's. Be brave, all souls who have such visions. As your body's alive as mine is dead, you're catching a little whiff of the ether reserved for God himself.
Moving ahead to page 35, Judge Sheila Lively. Suppose you stood just 5'2" and had worked your way as a grocery clerk studying law by candlelight until you became an attorney at law. And then suppose, through your diligence and regular church attendance, you became attorney for Thomas Rhodes, collecting notes and mortgages and representing all the widows in the probate court. And through it all, they jeered at your size and laughed at your clothes and your polished boots. And then suppose you became county judge, and Jefferson Howard and Kinsey Keene and Harmon Whitney and all the giants who had sneered at you were forced to stand before the bar and say, "Your Honor." Well, don't you think it was natural that I made it a little hard for them?
Zilpha Marsh. At 4 o'clock in late October, I sat alone in the country schoolhouse, back from the road mid stricken fields, and an eddy of wind blew leaves on the pane, and crooned in the flue of the cannon stove, with its open door blurring the shadows, with the spectral glow of a dying fire. In an idle mood, I was running the planchette. All at once my wrist grew limp, and my hand moved rapidly over the board, till the name Charles Guiteau was spelled, who threatened to materialize before me. I rose and fled from the room bareheaded into the dusk, afraid of my gift. After that the spirits swarmed, Chaucer, Caesar, Poe, and Marlowe, Cleopatra, and Mrs. Surratt, wherever I went, with messages.
More thrilling twaddle.
Charles Guiteau, indeed.
You talk nonsense to children.
And suppose I see what you never saw, never heard of, and have no word for. I must talk nonsense when you ask me what it is I see.
Burp, burp, burp. Oops. Okay, I'm now paying attention. Circe Foot. I went away to college, but rich Aunt Persis wouldn't help me. So I made gardens and raked the lawns and bought John Alden's books with my earnings and toiled for the very means of life. I wanted to marry Delia Prickett, but how could I do it with what I earned? And there was Aunt Persis, more than 70, who sat in a wheelchair half alive, with her throat so paralyzed when she swallowed the soup ran out of her mouth like a duck. A gourmand yet, investing her income in mortgages, fretting all the time about her notes and rents and papers. That day I was sawing wood for her and reading Prodholm in between. I went in the house for a drink of water, and there she sat asleep in her chair, and Prodholm lying on the table and a bottle of chloroform on the book, and she used sometimes for an aching tooth. I poured the chloroform on a handkerchief and held it up to her nose till she died. Oh, Dahlia, Dahlia, you and Prodholm steadied my hand, and the coroner said she died of heart failure. I married Dahlia and got the money. A joke on you, Spoon River?
Mrs. Charles Bliss. Reverend Wiley advised me not to divorce him for the sake of the children, and Judge Summers advised him the same. So we stuck to the end of the path. But two of the children thought he was right, and 2 of the children thought I was right. And the 2 who sided with him blamed me, and the 2 who sided with me blamed him, and they grieved for the one they sided with. And all were torn with the guilt of judging, and tortured in soul because they could not admire equally him and me. Now every gardener knows that plants grown in cellars or under stones are twisted and yellow and weak, and no mother would let her baby suck